Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramanaya. Cherished Memories by Srimati T.R.Kanakammal, translated from Tamil by Srimati Lalita Krithivasan, Sri Ashram, Tiruvannamalai, India, 2002. Copyright Sri Ashram, Tiruvannamalai, first edition, year 2002, 2000 copies. Publisher's note. Those who have basked in the presence of Bhagavan Sri Ramana Maharshi are truly fortunate. They are to be revered, for they swam in the ocean of Sri Ramana's grace that is ever flowing, regardless of time and space. These devotees have come forward to share the experiences they have had in the physical presence of Sri Bhagavan with other devotees. These reminiscences of old devotees in recent years have taken the shape of books and are carrying the message and grace of Sri Bhagavan all over the world. Cherished Memories by Srimati Kanakammal is unique in more than one sense. Though young in the list of old devotees of Bhagavan Sri Ramana, her memories are green and fresh and are capable of transporting readers to the presence of Bhagavan as also to those times. Her memories also include the experiences and accounts of Muruganar, a staunch devotee of Sri Bhagavan, as she had the opportunity of serving him for many years. Thanks to the efforts of V. Ganesan, these memories are on record and are part of the Ashram publications now. Sri Bhagavan is pure like crystal. As crystal reflects the various colors in front, the devotees' various modes of expression of devotion are reflected in Sri Bhagavan. They also serve as a guide to other devotees to adopt the highest spiritual path as expounded by Sri Bhagavan. Cherished memories of Srimati Kanakammal will be of great help to us, and we are deeply indebted to her for her effort. 14th January 2002, Makara Shankaranti Day. Publisher Sri Ramanashramam. The genesis of the book. Sri Ramanashramam at the foot of the Annamalai hill served as a setting for several wonderful incidents. Every incident that occurred in Bhagavan's presence has an important lesson for all of us. Such lessons cannot be found in any book of philosophy. They are the priceless jewels locked away in the memories of those devotees fortunate enough to have witnessed them in person. Bhagavan's answers to the queries of devotees eager to obtain clarifications on spiritual and moral matters constitute invaluable lessons for all spiritual seekers. These questions and answers were recorded by various devotees, and these records serve as guides to successive generations of Ramana devotees. Bhagavan was not in the habit of giving discourses. His life itself was a lesson in spirituality. Every incident and every remark, however casual and spontaneous it might appear to be, served to illustrate some great truth. Devotees like Munagala Venkatramaya, Devaraja Mudalayar, Suri Nagamma, Ramanananda Swarnagiri, Paul Brunton, and Maurice Friedman have compiled their memoirs. They were privileged to witness several conversations and episodes. In addition to this, these devotees were all gifted writers, and their books are not only informative but also highly enjoyable. While reading these books, one gets transported to the very times when these incidents actually took place. My own humble effort at writing cannot be compared to the wonderful works of these great authors. I came to stay in Ramanashramam in 1946. Even in those days, I noticed several devotees keeping careful notes about everything that went on in the ashram. Somehow, it never occurred to me to write down my own personal experiences and observations. I was content with filling my eyes and ears with Bhagavan's glorious form and enthralling words. I used to relive every moment spent in his company. The decision to write this book was not a spontaneous one. It was prompted by circumstances. I had been explaining Bhagavan's complete works to a small group of devotees. Once in a while I would narrate some anecdote or the other, just to illustrate a point. Sri Kunjaswami, Sri Ganesan and Srimati Anuradha, who made up the little group, were fascinated by the various incidents I told them. They insisted that I should write down everything I had recounted to them. At first, I was reluctant, but they persuaded me to make the attempt. They argued that unless I wrote about my experiences, they would remain confined to my memories and none could get the chance of benefiting by their study. At last, for the benefit of devotees, I was convinced that it was Bhagavan's will that I should write a book. I consider myself extremely fortunate because while I was trying to find the right words to describe each incident, my memories transported me back to the happiest period of my life, those glorious days spent in Bhagavan's presence. Time and space are no more than illusions, and the mind has the power to transcend these illusory barriers. Sri Ganesan has always been fascinated by the accounts of all devotees. He had witnessed the interaction between Bhagavan and his devotees. To him goes the credit of persuading and motivating me to record my cherished memories in a book. I hope that by Bhagavan's grace, more and more devotees feel the urge to write about their own experiences so that people come to know more about enchanting Ramana. T.R.Kanakammal, Sri Ramanasramam. Chapter 1. The Greatness of Arunachala. You destroy the ego of those who meditate upon you in the heart, O Arunachala. Aksharamanammalai by Sri Bhagavan. The sacred name Arunachala, consisting of 5 syllables Aru-Na-Cha-La, is worthy of constant remembrance and repeated chanting. The ego or the I thought of the person who thinks of this name disappears completely. Such is the power of the name. It is practically impossible to destroy the ego. But the very thought of Arunachala can erase the ego and grant liberation. It is said that liberation is assured for those who take birth in Kamalalayam, in Tiruvarur, for those who visit Chidambaram, for those who die in Kasi or Banaras, and for those who merely think of Arunachala. Many saints have described the glory of Arunachala with great fervor. Saint Guhai Namachivaya pays a glowing tribute to Arunachala thus. Arunachala beckons to those who are desirous of gaining liberation. This is the hill that grants the wishes of devotees without any reservation. This hill takes complete possession of the hearts of its devotees. The rewards that are bestowed upon those who respond to the call of Arunachala are best described by the Saivite saint Thiruvannamalai, who himself received several priceless gifts including a pearl-studded palanquin, a ceremonial umbrella made of pearls, and golden symbols from the Lord himself, in these words, all the sins of those who worship Arunachala disappear without trace. That is, the devotees of Arunachala receive the invaluable gift of liberation. Appar sings, Arunachala, you are the beginningless beginning. You alone are the Supreme Lord. Sundaramurti Nayanar, who has the distinction of being considered the beloved companion of the Lord, says, those blessed ones who give up all physical desires and experience love for you alone will certainly realize you, my Lord. Manika Vachakar, whose poems are like garlands of precious stones adorning the neck of the Lord, praises Arunachala thus, O Arunachala, my revered Father, I praise thee. Your form is a limitless ocean of beauty which gladdens my eyes, and I praise thee. In this way, Arunachala has been praised by the great Saivite saints in their devotional poems. It is seldom that all the 4 great Saivite saints have sung the praises of the deity in the same temple. Tiruvannamalai is one of those very few temples to have enjoyed this rare honor. In addition to this, Tiruvannamalai has a unique distinction of being known as the place where Jivan Muktas abound. Guhai Namachivaya, Guru Namachivaya, Virupakshadeva, Sivapragasa, Deva Sigamani Desigar, Isani Jnanadesigar, Seshadri Swami and Bhagavan Sri Ramana Maharshi are but a few of the realized souls who chose Tiruvannamalai as their place of residence. It is not only the great souls in mortal form who chose Arunachala as the venue for their penance and meditation. The Mother of the Universe, Parvati Devi herself, chose this spot for penance. The Puranas tell us how the Divine Mother came down to the earth to atone for a thoughtless prank she played on Lord Shiva, as a result of which the entire universe was plunged in darkness for ages together. The Divine Mother performed penance in Tiruvannamalai, and the Lord, pleased with her devotion, appeared before her and granted her a half of his form. She was desirous of everlasting union with her Lord, and therefore he made her an inseparable part of himself. This is the story behind the manifestation of Lord Shiva as Ardhanarishwara. The Puranic account of the appearance of the Arunachala hill is very interesting. Brahma, the Lord of creation, became very conceited when he saw the beauty of his own creation. Vishnu, the preserver, was also quite proud of his own capabilities in taking care of the entire created universe. The point to be noted, however, is that it was Brahma's arrogant and taunting actions that ignited the spark of pride in Vishnu. Brahma went to Vaikuntham, the abode of Vishnu, and boasted to him about his own prowess. He said, "If I had not created the universe, how could you have looked after it? Don't ever forget that without me you would have been nobody. In fact, even now, I could remove you from here and create a new authority for this position. Have you forgotten that it was I who caused Rishi Bhrigu to curse you and thus created the opportunity for you to manifest yourself in the 10 avatars or incarnations? You should learn to give me the respect I deserve. Otherwise, I will create somebody new and take all your powers away. Maybe you are under the impression that you are greater than I am just because I appeared from the lotus in your navel. Don't you remember that you manifested yourself in a stone pillar in response to Prahalada's prayers? Now, can I say that the stone pillar is your father just because you came out of it? Wouldn't that argument be quite ridiculous? Well, your idea that you're my father just because they came out of your form is as ridiculous. The forest fire that is kindled by the rubbing together of 2 dry twigs has the power to destroy the entire forest. In the same way, I who appeared to come out of you have the power to destroy you completely. If you're not convinced, let me give you one more illustration. You know that the ears of an animal appear first and the horns much later. Yet, the horns are the powerful weapons, whereas the ears are worthless in a fight. Now do you understand how foolish it would be for you to think of yourself as my superior? You are not even my equal, leave alone being superior. Thus spoke Brahma in his pride and ignorance. What a fine illustration of the saying, pride goes before a fall. Incensed by Brahma's cruel teasing, Vishnu retorted, "He who insults his mother or his motherland, it is said, will certainly suffer for it. You seem to have forgotten the circumstances of your coming into being. Do not mistake my tolerance as a sign of weakness. I would prefer not to harm you, as you are like a son to me. But if you exceed the limits of my tolerance, I will not hesitate to destroy you. After all, did I not destroy Madhu and Kaitaba? Even though they were my own sons, I can destroy you with equal ease. It is said, he who planted the sapling will not cut down the tree. But there is a limit to a father's tolerance. Do not force me to be harsh. Be careful what you say and do. Otherwise, you might land yourself in great trouble." Actually, I find your arrogant bragging quite amusing. Maybe you have forgotten what happened when you annoyed Lord Shiva. You were under the impression that just because you had 5 heads like him, your power was also equal to Lord Shiva's. So you went to him and irritated him with your arrogant behavior. And what happened to you then? Lord Shiva plucked off one of your 5 heads. Could you do anything about that? You who boast about your prowess at creating limitless worlds and numerous life forms, were you able to create a new head for yourself? Of course not. When you cannot even create a single new head, and that too, for your own benefit, how can you consider yourself invincible or superior to all others? Vishnu continued, Have you also forgotten your encounter with the demon Somukasura? You came rushing to me when he threatened you. Now, why did you do that? If you were really as powerful as you claimed to be, why should you have needed my help? You were incapable of retrieving the Vedas from the wicked Somukasura, and I had to take my Matsya Avatara and chase him to the bottom of the ocean, fight him, kill him, and get the Vedas back. What makes you think I'm not powerful enough to kill you also just the way I killed Somukasura? I admit that I have no real wish to kill you, but if you persist in your foolish taunting, I might lose my patience and destroy you in a fit of anger. So, do not provoke me further. It is a well-known fact that the faults of a loved one go largely unnoticed. But when love has gone, every little thing gets magnified, and every small disagreement gets blown out of proportion. The debate between Brahma and Vishnu, which was just a verbal duel in the beginning, soon led to more and more heated arguments, until finally it became a full-fledged battle. Who can withstand the fury of the gods? When the creator and the preserver of the universe were engaged in battle, all of creation suffered. There was utter chaos everywhere. At last, it became so terrible that the Devas, or the celestial beings, could not bear it any longer. They went to Lord Shiva and begged him to intervene. Lord Shiva knew the reason for the rivalry between Brahma and Vishnu. He could have easily put an end to the disagreement by displaying his limitless power, but he chose to achieve this in a different way. As Brahma and Vishnu were busy fighting, they suddenly saw an endless column of fire that had manifested beside them. The primal sound of the Pranava mantra, Om, filled the air. Brahma and Vishnu marveled at the sight and paused to consider the origin of this awesome phenomenon. Soon, it occurred to them that this marvelous manifestation could serve a practical purpose in settling their dispute. They decided that they should find the limits of the seemingly endless column of divine light. Whoever could reach one of the ends of the column, they decided should be considered superior to the other. As soon as this decision was reached, Brahma took the form of a swan and flew upwards, determined to reach the top of the column. This is what the Siva Puranam says about Brahma's actions. Brahma, who could recite the 4 Vedas simultaneously with his 4 mouths, and is the lord of the goddess of knowledge, took the form of a bird. Does this not tell us how badly he was affected by the rise of his ego? We refer to a stupid person as being bird-witted, do we not? The poet points out the irony of the wisest of the gods taking the form of a bird and flying off on a mission unworthy of his position. This would never have happened if he had kept his mind under control. Meanwhile, Vishnu had taken the form of a boar and started digging into the earth, hoping to find the root of the column. Vishnu, the mighty god, who had measured the 3 worlds with 3 footsteps, was now burrowing into the earth. When referring to someone who has lost his high status, do we not say he has fallen into the depths? Vishnu was now intent upon pushing himself more and more deeply into the very bowels of the earth. The lesson to be learned from this incident is that when the ego is allowed to assert itself, even the greatest being starts behaving in a petty manner. Brahma, who had set out to locate the summit of the column, flew on and on for years together. But however high he flew, he was no nearer his goal. He was tiring fast. The feathers in his swan body were dropping off one by one. He was very close to despair and had almost decided to abandon his fruitless quest when he saw a Ketaki flower dropping downwards. Brahma asked the flower, "Where are you coming from?" The flower replied, "I slipped from Lord Shiva's crown and have been falling for a few thousand years. As yet I have not got a glimpse of the bottom of this column. I am growing quite tired. Please move aside and let me pass. I would be glad to get to the end of my journey." The flower's words gave Brahma an idea. He said to the flower, "I have just come from the earth and I will carry you down to the bottom with me if you agree to do a small favor for me." The flower, being close to exhaustion, was only too happy to get a lift to the earth. So it agreed to do what Brahma wanted it to do. Brahma made the Ketaki flower promise to support his claim that he had himself traveled to the top of the column of fire and plucked the flower directly from the top. Now, Brahma was certain that he could easily convince Vishnu to concede that he had won the contest. He hurried downwards with the flower in his hands, rejoicing in his triumph. In the meantime, Vishnu was going deeper and deeper into the earth's core, but the column of fire seemed to go on forever. Soon, Vishnu realized that he could never hope to find the root of the column. He decided to return to the surface and admit his inability to reach the goal. In this lies Vishnu's greatness. Though he was as guilty as Brahma in his original pride, he proved himself superior to Brahma when he realized his limitations and determined to admit as much. When Vishnu reached the surface of the earth, Brahma rushed up to him and said, "Now you know which one of us is superior. I reached the top of this column just as I said I would. This column is indeed a manifestation of Lord Shiva, for I saw his matted locks at the top of the column. Look, I have even brought you a flower which I plucked from his crown." The Ketaki flower confirmed Brahma's story. The very next instant, the column exploded and Lord Shiva appeared before them. "Brahma," thundered the Lord, "your claims are fantastic indeed. Really, your words amuse me." The laughter of Shiva shook the seven worlds and the whole creation trembled in fear. Brahma realized the extent of his foolishness. Trembling, he fell at the feet of the Lord. Vishnu too prostrated to the Lord and sang his praises with utmost humility and devotion. Lord Shiva was pleased with Vishnu's devotion and granted him several boons. Then he turned to Brahma and cursed him, saying, "You shall no longer be worshipped as a god. There shall be no temples for you on this earth." The Lord cursed the Ketaki flower also. He ordained that the Ketaki would no longer be considered worthy of being offered to him in worship. Though neither Brahma nor Vishnu had considered it at the time, Vishnu's task was by far the most difficult. He had set out to reach the source of the column of fire, that is, the feet of the Lord, which have more power than even his crown. Whereas the desire to rise higher and higher, ambition, often results in utter ruin, humility and the urge for total surrender at his feet can raise the seeker to great heights. The main reason for Brahma's arrogance was his belief that, as he was the lord of Saraswati, the goddess of learning, he must be the wisest of all beings. Saraswati is said to be seated on the tongue of her consort, and this was the reason for Brahma's pride. As for Vishnu, the root of his pride lay in his being the lord of Lakshmi, the goddess of wealth. The pride of wealth and the pride of intellect are the two most dangerous weaknesses. Of these, intellectual pride is by far the deadlier. Wealth can be measured, and therefore the pride of wealth has its limits. But intellectual pride does not recognize any such limitations. Intellect, being intangible, defies measurement and does not allow comparisons to be made. This is why tests of intellectual prowess between scholars often prove inconclusive. The pride of intellect is so vicious that it urges its victim to seek glory at all costs, tempting him to adopt foul means if fair ones prove ineffective. Did Brahma not resort to falsehood just to avoid facing defeat in the competition? And what is worse, he even corrupted the Ketaki flower. Our Puranas contain various stories and parables. Our forefathers wanted to instill in us a strong sense of values. To this end, they composed the Puranic stories, each of which illustrates some moral. This particular story paints a very vivid picture of the consequences of pride. When ordinary men fight, we tend to dismiss the episode as only normal. But when the same situation is presented with gods as central characters, the impact is much stronger, and so the lesson proves more effective. From this story, it is very clear that however high a person's status might be, the instant he allows his ego to assert itself, he topples down to the very depths of indignity. Sri Muruganar has composed a song based on this Puranic story. This song is titled Arunachala Tattvam in collected works of Ramana Maharshi, and it says, "The sudden rise of the blazing column of light in front of Brahma and Vishnu and the utter distress at not being able to know the same is symbolic of the spurana of the heart center as the real self of the intellect and the ego." The Arunachala hill is said to have been a hill of fire in the Krita Yuga, to have glowed as a ruby in the Treta Yuga, as a hill of copper in the Dwapara Yuga, and a hill of stone in the Kali Yuga. Up to the beginning of the Kali Yuga, the hill had maintained the red color of fire. The rocks in the Arunachala hill are of great antiquity. The Vairakundre near this hill is full of stones which are considered eminently suitable for sculpting the idols of gods and goddesses. The Valluvar Kotam in Madras has been built with stones taken from Vairakundre. Bhagavan's sofa at Ramanashramam is also made of this stone, and it bears testimony to the strength and beauty of the stone. The Arunachala Mahatmyam records the origin of the hill from collected works of Ramana Maharshi in these words. That day on which the ancient and wonderful linga of Arunachala took shape is the asterism of Aradra in the month of Mrigasira, and the day on which Vishnu and the other devas worshipped the Lord in the form of effulgence is the day of Mahashivratri. It also records Lord Shiva's decree which says, "I ordain that residents within a radius of 3 yojanas, which is 30 miles of this hill, shall by itself suffice to burn off all defects and effect union with the Supreme, even in the absence of initiation." According to the Puranas, there are 8 great hills which are sanctified by the fact that God dwells on them. They are Himalaya, Mandara, Kailasa, Vindhya, Nishada, Hemakuta, Neelachala, and the Gandhamadanam. While these hills are dwelling places of the Lord, the Arunachala hill is Shiva himself. The hill is not a separate entity, the manifestation of his form. It is customary to place an idol of Nandideva facing the main deity in any temple of Lord Shiva. In Tiruvannamalai, we can see several idols of Nandideva installed at various spots around the Arunachala hill facing him from many different angles. Arunachala hill is one majestic Sivalinga. The unique feature of the Sivalinga is that it can be said to have a form, but at the same time it is formless, Rupa Arupam. That is, the Sivalinga does have a shape, but this shape does not represent anything in particular. We recognize the linga as a manifestation of Lord Shiva. Yet, the linga does not bear any resemblance to the form of any god or goddess. In this respect, it's like the pranava, Om, which is pure sound alone. It is the primeval sound, apparently without any meaning, yet pregnant with meaning. The greatness of Arunachala has been proclaimed in Arunachala Mahatmyam. Bhagavan has conveyed this in mellifluent and moving Tamil verses. One of these verses says, "That is the holy place. Of all, Arunachala is the most sacred. It is the heart of the world. Know it to be the secret and sacred heart center of Siva. In that place he always abides as the glorious Aruna hill." Arunachala and the sage of Arunachala. The title of this chapter seems to suggest that Bhagavan and the Arunachala hill are two separate entities. But if one were to study the life of Bhagavan, it would become clear that he never considered himself as being separate from the hill. He considered the hill as a manifestation of the self. We could say that the Arunachala hill had taken on a human form, the form of Bhagavan Sri Ramana Maharshi, to spread the divine message among the common people of the world. Bhagavan and the Arunachala hill were one and the same. Bhagavan was always in a state of oneness with the self, Sahajatmanishta. To him, it was the most natural thing to carry on with everyday activities without ever wavering from that higher state of absorption in the self. Numerous incidents in Bhagavan's life bear testimony to this fact. In the last verse of the Navamani-malai, Necklet of 9 Gems, Bhagavan sings, "You are my father and my mother, you who brought me into this world, O Arunachala." Sometimes Bhagavan would be gazing at something through the window in the hall. At those times, Bhagavan's gaze would be steady and unwavering. Once a devotee asked Bhagavan, "What is it that you're looking at, Bhagavan? Is it the light? Or is it Arunachaleswara?" To this query, Bhagavan replied, "Is that what you want to know? I am looking at myself. There is after all nothing other than myself." Thus, Bhagavan has stated the essence of the theory of non-duality, Abheda Bhavam, unequivocally. After the mother's passing away, Bhagavan would come down from Skandashramam every day and spend some time near the spot where the mother's mortal remains had been enshrined. One day, Bhagavan came down as usual, but did not return to Skandashramam. The devotees came down looking for him. Upon finding him near the mother's samadhi, they requested him to return to Skandashramam. But Bhagavan said, "Some power has brought me here. It was not my decision, but the divine will." From that time onwards, Bhagavan stayed in that spot at the foot of the hill, and Ramanashramam came up there. At times, Bhagavan's words and actions would make us wonder whether he is a bhakta or devotee, melting with the love for Arunachala rather than a dispassionate, detached jnani. Once, during the Deepam festival, the deity from the temple was being taken in a ceremonial procession around the hill. As the procession went past Ramanashramam, devotees of Bhagavan offered coconuts, flowers, and fruits to the Lord and performed arati. Bhagavan was on his way to the cowshed at that time. Hearing the temple drums, he came and sat on the small bridge near the water tap. One of the devotees brought the arati plate with the glowing camphor which had been offered to Arunachaleswara. Bhagavan took the sacred ash from the plate and applying it on his forehead, remarked softly, "The son is beholden to the father." As he said this, Bhagavan's voice was choked with emotion. His eyes glittered with unshed tears of ecstasy. This incident seems to illustrate the saying, absolute knowledge or jnana is no different from absolute devotion or bhakti. Bhagavan's love for Arunachala was so deep that he never left it even for a moment. He was never tired of going around the hill and visiting and revisiting his favorite spots on and around the hill. He would sit for hours, silently gazing at the peak of the hill, totally enraptured by the sight. Every year, on Kartige Deepam Day, Bhagavan would gaze at the hill through a pair of binoculars, his attention totally focused on the spot at which the sacred Deepam would appear. The very mention of the name Arunachala would bring a special glow to Sri Bhagavan's face. Bhagavan told us of the numerous miracles which took place on the hill. He told us about his own life on the hill, the various caves dotted all over the hill, the greatness of the banyan tree on the northern slope of the highest peak, about the siddhas who dwell on the hill, and about the priceless herbs that grow on it that cure even incurable diseases. He often remarked, "There is not a single spot on the hill that my feet have not trod." To ordinary, imperfect human minds and eyes, the Arunachala hill seems to be made up of rocks and stones. But to Bhagavan, it was the manifestation of divine knowledge, the embodiment of the self. One should not forget that Bhagavan himself was the Arunachala hill. This makes it even more remarkable that he should be so fascinated by another manifestation of himself. Bhagavan's adoration of the hill is just one facet of the master-pupil relationship. Bhagavan is very eloquent in his praise of Arunachala. He often told his devotees that the hill had elevated him from the level of an ordinary human being and shown him the way to union with the self. Bhagavan's love and reverence for Arunachala are so great that his songs in praise of Arunachala have a special sweetness of their own. Bhagavan was never tired of extolling the greatness of the hill. On various occasions, he has stated that Arunachala is the most potent manifestation of Lord Shiva. In this connection, it would be pertinent to describe an incident that occurred while Bhagavan was staying in the Virupaksha cave. A Dikshidhar from Chidambaram, having heard about Bhagavan, came to see him. He stayed in Tiruvannamalai town and visited the Virupaksha cave daily. During every visit, he had long scholarly discussions with Bhagavan on various spiritual matters. This Dikshidhar repeatedly said, "Bhagavan, Chidambaram is one of the holiest places in South India. Is it not the Akashalinga Kshetram where the Lord is in his cosmic form? I implore you to visit this hallowed shrine at least once, Bhagavan." After this had gone on for a while, Bhagavan wrote something on a piece of paper and gave it to the Dikshidhar. It was a poem, and when translated, this is what it said. "In the court of Chidambaram, Shiva, though motionless by nature, dances in rapture before his Shakti who stands still. Know that in Arunachala he stands in his solemnity, and she withdraws there into his unmoving self." Necklet of 9 Gems, verse 1. Needless to say, the Dikshidhar never again tried to persuade Bhagavan to visit Chidambaram. On summer evenings, Bhagavan would spend long hours reclining on an easy chair in the veranda outside the hall, quietly gazing at the hill. At such times, Bhagavan's face seemed to take on a special glow, and his eyes shone even more brilliantly than usual, almost as though Bhagavan was marveling at his own unique good fortune, being in such close proximity to the Arunachala hill. Arunachala is one of the holiest spots in India, a catalyst in the spiritual evolution of sincere souls. The number of sages who have lived in and around Arunachala is beyond count. In the early days of Bhagavan's stay in Tiruvannamalai, he was totally absorbed in the self. He neither ate, nor slept, nor talked. In those days, he tried to avoid disturbance by staying in the most secluded spots. During this period, he stayed in the Patalalinga cave, in Gurumurtam, and in the Virupaksha cave. All these mark the samadhis or shrines of great sages. The remarkable thing is that, by choosing to grace them with his presence, Bhagavan brought added glory to these already hallowed spots. Some of the sages of Arunachala are Virupaksha Deva, Guhai Namachivaya, Guru Namachivaya, Sadguru Swami, Isanya Jnana Desigar, Devasigamani Desigar, Siva Pragasa, and Seshadri Swami. This Arunachala hill, which proved an irresistible attraction for various sages through the ages, claimed yet another unique prize. It was a young and innocent boy of school-going age, Venkataraman, Bhagavan Sri Ramana, the darling of his mother's heart. Though barely 17, the boy possessed extraordinary spiritual potential. Hitherto, Arunachala had been a powerful magnet drawing sages to itself. No wonder young Venkataraman proved an irresistible target for the hill. How could Arunachala leave the chosen boy unclaimed? He, the divine hunter, spread his net with utmost care. He enticed the boy to Tiruvannamalai by causing his name to be uttered in the child's presence, sending a thrill down his frame. And once he reached Arunachala, there was no question of going back. He was ensnared for life. The divine hunter had captured the soul of Venkataraman and devoured him fully in a trice. Henceforth, he had no separate existence as an individual. He had merged with the perfect being. Bhagavan himself has acknowledged this in one of his songs. He says, "I have discovered a new thing. This hill, the lodestone of lives, arrests the moment of anyone who so much as thinks of it, draws him face to face with it, and fixes him motionless like itself to feed upon his soul thus ripened. What a wonder is this, O souls! Beware of it and live. Such a destroyer of lives is this magnificent Arunachala, which shines within the heart." 11 verses to Arunachala, verse 10. Arunachala not only drew the young boy to himself, but performed yet another far more remarkable feat. Arunachala persuaded Bhagavan Ramana the sage, who was beyond all worldly attachments, to burst forth with the romantic and mystic poem, the Ashram. This brings to mind the incident in Saint Manikavasagar's life, where Lord Shiva appears before him and asks him to sing a kovai, a Tamil poem composed in a unique metrical form. Similarly, Lord Arunachala took pleasure in making Sri Ramana sing the singularly lyrical poem, the Ch.3-Arunachaleswara. Bhagavan composed the Ch.3-Arunachaleswara in response to the specific request of his devotees who wanted to chant it while going around asking for alms. But the greatness of the song lies in the fact that the devotee's every need is fulfilled by the mere recitation of this potent poem. In one of the stanzas, Bhagavan refers to Arunachala as an ocean of grace in the form of a hill. Arunachala Pancharatnam, verse 1. This might sound strange, but it is an indisputable fact that the Arunachala hill, though it looks like any other hill of rocks and stones, is a limitless ocean of grace, the Lord Shiva himself. Bhagavan did not have any guru in the conventional sense. That is, he had no human guru. But Bhagavan has clearly stated the identity of his guru. In Ch.3-Arunachaleswara verse 19, Bhagavan says that Arunachala has wiped out all his faults and taken possession of him. The greatest error is said to be arrogance, and the true guru is one who destroys the ego of the disciple. Bhagavan says that Arunachala is the destroyer of his ego and acknowledges him as his guru. In another stanza, the 20th, of Ch.3-Arunachaleswara, Bhagavan says, "Arunachala, there are many in this world who are on the lookout for easy prey. Their eyes are like sharp swords, which can pierce through all the defenses of an ordinary mortal. Please take me into your care, Arunachala, and protect me from such unscrupulous people." Here, the reference is to false seers who with deceptive looks and cunning speech try to ensnare the unwary seeker and lead him deeper and deeper into ignorance. Only the real Guru can show the way to light. The false ones only lead one into the darkness of the abyss. Aksharamanammalai, garland of exquisite verses, mirrors all human emotions like love, humor, valor, anger, etc. However, the dominant mood is Sringara, which is love or romance. The romantic symbolism is evident throughout the work. The last verse, in which Arunachala is requested to bestow his garland of divine grace on Bhagavan and accept Bhagavan's garland of verses in return, is a direct reference to the most important ritual in marriage, the exchange of garlands between the bride and the groom. This exchange of garlands is symbolic of the joyful union of two human beings. Bhagavan is asking Arunachala to solemnize the union of the Jiva, the individual soul, with the Para, the Almighty, resulting in everlasting bliss. In the first 3 stanzas of the Arunachala Ashtakam, Bhagavan says that even in his childhood, the consciousness of Arunachala was there, deep down in his heart. As a child, he says, he did not know what the name Arunachala actually meant, but he felt that the name stood for something very precious, something beyond the reach of ordinary mortals. When a relative told him that Arunachala was another name for Tiruvannamalai, he did not quite grasp the significance of the information. Within a while, however, the irresistible power of Arunachala drew Bhagavan to Tiruvannamalai. Having arrived at Tiruvannamalai, Bhagavan gazed awestruck at the hill and sang, Arunachala at first sight might appear to be an ordinary hill of rocks and stones, but what a wonderful hill this is! Its powers can only be guessed at. Even the most learned scholar cannot estimate the divine power of Arunachala. In the second stanza, Bhagavan says, You drew me unto yourself, Arunachala. Powerless to resist your pull, I came to you. As I stood gazing at you, your power worked a wonderful transformation in me. I pondered, who is it that is looking at this hill? And at once my eye sense disappeared. I had no identity of my own any longer. You alone remained. So I could no longer say I saw the hill. At the same time, I could not say I did not see. How can I deny you, Arunachala? In olden times it was you who imparted the ultimate truth through silence. You, who were Dakshinamurti then, have now taken on the form of the Arunachala hill. Can the truth that Dakshinamurti preached through silence be expressed in words? You are the embodiment of the truth, Arunachala. You who stand before me as this great hill spanning the earth and the sky. In the third stanza, Bhagavan says further, So great is the power of this hill that the very sight of it cleansed my heart and destroyed my ego. I lost my individuality and merged with the self. I had imagined that Arunachala would have a form that I could clasp to my heart. But now I know that this great hill is a manifestation of the Almighty. My journey to this place to see Arunachala the Omnipresent is like the journey undertaken by a man who travels all over the world to catch a glimpse of the sky. Having arrived here, I am like a doll made of sugar drowning in the ocean. I am completely dissolved in you. I have merged with you totally. When I ask myself, who am I realize that I have no identity apart from you. You are the only truth. Chapter 3. Arunachaleswara Temple. The sacred temple of Arunachaleswara is one of the biggest temples in Tamil Nadu. It's a huge temple covering nearly 25 acres and is truly marvelous in its construction. The temple walls are so high that they seem to be touching the sky. The eastern tower or Rajagopuram of this temple is the tallest in South India. It is even taller than the tower of the big temple in Thanjavur. The tower of the Thanjavur temple is 216 feet tall, whereas the one in the Arunachala temple is 217 feet in height. This huge tower is the main entrance to the Arunachala temple. The entrance is 98 feet wide and 135 feet long. This tower is so majestic in its appearance that it is easy to fancy that it's the entrance not only to the temple but to the whole of the Arunachala hill itself. When one beholds the Arunachala hill from this spot, the entire hill seems to be beautifully framed by this doorway, and it appears as though the temple walls enclose the whole of the hill. There are 5 corridors in this temple. All the idols show excellent craftsmanship. The idols which are taken out in procession during the temple festivals are of Panchaloka, an alloy of 5 metals. The Vahanas or ceremonial mounts are remarkable both in size and in beauty. Of special note is the huge silver Nandi or sacred bull which bears the idol of Arunachala on the 5th day of the annual Deepam festival. Its beauty is beyond description. There is no other festival like it anywhere else in the world. Its majestic expression and the proud look in its eyes are artistic marvels. The Panchabhuta Kshetras, or the sacred spots where Lord Shiva manifested himself in the form of the 5 elements are Kanchipuram or Tiruvarur as earth, Tiruvannamalai as water, Tiruvannamalai as fire, Kalahasti as air, and Chidambaram as space. Of these, Tiruvannamalai is a spot where the Lord has manifested himself in the form of fire. This fact is borne out by the tradition of fire walking on the Adipuram day. Devotees walk on glowing coals laid out in front of the goddesses' shrines on this day. This is the only temple in South India where such walking on fire is done within the temple precincts. Another tradition unique to this temple is the burning of the effigy of Kama, the god of love, within the precincts of the temple during the spring festival. Everywhere else, the burning of Kama is carried out only on street corners. The Sthala Vriksha or sacred tree of this temple is Magira. One of the gopurams or towers of the temple is known as the Vallala Rajagopuram. This tower attained fame through its association with sage Arunagirinatha. It was from the top of this tower that Arunagirinatha hurled himself to the ground with the intention of ending his life. Lord Subramanya held him in his arms and saved him from death. Having saved his life, Subramanya commanded Arunagirinatha to sing the sacred Tirupugar, a compilation of hymns. The Lord even supplied his devotee with the first word of the poem himself. The idol of Lord Subramanya in this shrine, with the Vallala Rajagopuram, is known as the Gopurathu Elayanar. This tower was built by the king known as Vallala Raja, who was a great devotee of Lord Shiva. This king was childless and he prayed to Lord Shiva to bless him with a son. So pleased was the Lord with the king's devotion that he himself became the king's child for a while and took upon himself the duty of performing the last rites of Vallala Raja after his death. The practice of lighting a lamp at the top of the hill must have been in vogue from time immemorial. In the earliest Tamil literature, the phrase "like a beacon on the top of a hill" is used as an illustration of widespread fame. The origin of this tradition can be traced back to the legend of Ardhanarishwara. According to the legend, the Divine Mother Parvati came to Tiruvannamalai and did penance to be united with her Lord. Lord Shiva was so pleased with Devi's penance that he appeared before her as a column of dazzling light and took her into himself. This merging of Shiva and Sakti is represented by the Ardhanarishwara form. This event occurred on the full moon day under the star Kritika in the Tamil month of Kartigai. Ever since, it has been the practice to light a lamp at the top of the Arunachala hill on this day every year and worship the Lord. These 10 days are marked by grand processions and other traditional festivities. The mounds of the deities are all of silver, and each one is of remarkable beauty and size. The procession of the 5 main deities is an unforgettable sight. When the deepam is lit on top of the hill, Deeparadhana, or burning of camphor, is performed to all the 5 main deities within the Arunachaleswara Temple. Simultaneously, the decorated idol of Lord Ardhanarishwara is brought out on a palanquin. It is as if the Divine Father and Mother are keen to shower their grace upon the crowd of devotees gathered there. Lord Ardhanarishwara comes out of the shrine with the Bharani Deepam, ceremonial torch, showing the way and hurries along to the sound of drum beats. The other deities are already waiting for him. He grants his darshan to everyone, and in turn, he witnesses the Deepam glowing on top of the hill. In case the Deepam is not visible due to rain or clouds on the top of the hill, he paces restlessly to and fro, waiting for a clear view of the Deepam. Once he has seen the Deepam, he hurries back inside. The Deepam festival is undoubtedly the grandest festival in Tiruvannamalai. Every year, lakhs of devotees flock to Tiruvannamalai to witness the Deepam. It is believed that worshipping Lord Shiva in his fire form on that day can grant liberation to the sincere devotee. Another important festival is Tiruvudal, which takes place in January. Udal means temporary estrangement or separation between lovers. This festival takes place on the 2nd day of the Tamil month of Thai. The origin of this festival goes back to a very interesting legend. Sage Bringi, from Bringa, a Sanskrit word for bee, was such an ardent devotee of Shiva that he would not acknowledge any other god or goddess, not even goddess Parvati. Whenever Sage Bringi went around Lord Shiva and worshipped him, he was particular to avoid Parvati. So when goddess Parvati merged herself with Shiva and appeared before the sage in the form of Ardhanarishwara, Bringi took the form of a bee and, gnawing a hole through the divine form, went around Shiva's half of the form. This made Parvati, who was divine energy, so angry that she withdrew all energy from Bringi and reduced him to a mere skeleton. As this skeleton was too weak to stand, let alone continue his circumambulation, Lord Shiva granted him a 3rd leg to support himself. When Shiva decided to go to Bringi's hermitage in order to grant the sage liberation, Parvati became very angry. She refused to accompany Shiva to Bringi's hermitage and rushed into the temple. Lord Shiva found himself in a very difficult position. His compassion for his devotee, who was earnestly praying for liberation, was so great that he was prepared to risk the displeasure of Parvati. He decided to give darshan to Bringi, thus granting him moksha. On his return from Bringi's hermitage, Shiva pacified his consort. The apparent division of the inseparable and the subsequent reunion are nothing but the Lord's divine sport. All these are depicted in a series of rituals in the Tiruvudal festival.